This piece of property we have is 10 acres approximately, and probably 5 to 6 of it are wetland, a marsh. What you're seeing now is a section of field that was so horribly overgrown that we had somebody come in with a brush hog and they spent several hours, almost a day, working on cutting this. It was so bad, it's probably been 7 years since it had been done. It was so bad that they had trouble getting through. The goldenrod was fully 4 feet high. There were a lot of remnants of an invasive plant here in Vermont that is called wild parsnip or cow parsnip. It's apparently the indigenous Native Americans used to eat the root. But the sap from the plant, if you get the sap on your skin and then it's exposed to ultraviolet light, you get a horrible burning rash, and so it's just a miserable thing. So we are on what we believe to be a 3 to 5 year program of mowing this field every July before it goes to seed and get rid of it. This was obviously the worst time. It was so dense and so forth. But our property goes over into the midst of those sumacs over there and stretches down beyond these trees almost to the edge of that green field out there where you can see the marsh grass and the cattails end. And I'll give you a little bit more of a view from further down. I hope the wind is not too taking up way too much from the sound. This location is pretty windy. It's a north-south facing valley, and so the prevailing winds are generally from either the north or the south. There's always exceptions, but that's most of it. What you can see down there is a fairly large, we believe it's an ash tree, down in the corner where he stopped mowing. He got as close, this is a section behind the house which connects to the part that I just showed you, and I'll discuss that garbage in just a moment. But what we found is that there are 2 streams out here in the marsh. Our land goes almost all the way across. There's a stream that's probably 10 feet from where he finished mowing, and then the larger one, which is called Pond Brook, which connects Monkton Pond and Bristol Pond. That is out further, and in the spring the water is much higher and there's a lot of waterfowl and wildlife, and it's really kind of fun to be able to watch this as we go through the seasons. In any event, we walked out there a little bit the other day. You only have to go about 6 feet and there's water, so it is truly wet. We have no intentions of doing anything with any of this land. We're just going to use it as a buffer. That's a natural buffer right there out here in this field. We actually have part of our septic system, our mound system here in Vermont. The soil is so impermeable you have to build up a permeable mound with the piping and so forth, and you have a septic tank and then a pump that pumps the effluent out to the mound system. So that's what we've got. So nothing will happen out there. Our neighbor's home, the gentleman and his wife out there, they have been working for about 4 years to get a farm to home homestead going. They've got about over 100 chickens, they've got sheep, they've got pigs, a bunch of other things. We're getting our eggs from them, and nice people, and it's really kind of fun to have that going on. And across the way is part of one dairy farm. Right now they've got a couple of types of silage that they have harvested and brought in, and there's a couple of huge cornfields. And then over to the left there's a yellow field over there. Those are soybeans that are turning, whoops, not doing a good job here. Those are soybeans over there that are turning yellow and will be harvested shortly. Those belong to another farmer family. Their house is just behind the trees to the right of the frame there. We went there yesterday, and they have a lot of goats, turkeys, peacocks, pigs. They raise beef cattle and dairy cattle, and you can buy eggs and meat, sausage they make, all kinds of good stuff right across the way over there. So one of the first things that happened when we started having the mowing done is he was stymied because some previous owners had used this as a dumping ground. I think you can see the shape of a square or a rectangle, a little bit darker out there where they had a vegetable garden out there. There were a lot of fence posts and chicken wire that Mary's been working like crazy to pull out and get out. There's part of a child's swing set right there. Further down, that yellow plastic is a child's slide that went with the swing set. There's tarp, there's fence posts, there's pieces of an old lawn sweeper. There were a couple of pressure washers that were broken and dumped, a lawnmower battery, just stuff you should not be throwing out in a field, and it had been totally buried. So now we're trying to get it, we're going to get it hauled away and so forth. Here's some remnants of a vegetable garden that somebody had more recently, although the weeds were 5 feet tall in it when we got here. Mary has cleaned it out. We have a tarp on there to try and kill anything that may come up. And the plan is to put a couple of more beds just this side of that with a lawnmower or two's width between. And we don't want to go too huge on a garden the first season here. We've got to get the sod turned over and get that taken care of, and that's a tough job. But we're looking at, I think that one is 8 by 10, and we're looking at a couple of 4 by 8s to go with that, which should give us enough for the basics. We're not going to get into corn and potatoes and that much stuff. We've got so many little local farm stands around us that sell all of those things all summer long. So, and then we also need to start on the flower gardens and deciding what we're going to do. I'd like to get some blueberry bushes back here. I used to have blueberry bushes when we were in Vermont, and that's a fun thing to have. This was where there was an above-ground pool, which we told the seller we did not want, and so they had it hauled away, and there was a wooden deck here around it that was on concrete piers. We didn't want that either. Our plan is to turn this into a garden pond, not quite as large as that and not round, but this will be the starting point for it, and have some flower gardens, shrubs and things of that nature, and stonework around the pond. And then here next to it is a big slab of concrete that used to be a basketball court for one of the children who grew up in this home, and we're going to put some edging on that and fill it with some pea stone and use it as a location for a fire pit, copying somebody that we know very well in New Jersey. And there is a shed. Again, we have got a priority list of projects we need to do, and some of them we need to try and get done before the winter cold weather really comes. Really the last major one to get done outdoors is going to be to replace some of the rotting corner boards that are on this shed. Half of them need to be replaced. Then I want to scrape the paint, the green paint, fill some and caulk where there's some rot getting in there, and seal it and get a coat of paint on it before winter time. That to me would be very important. And then in the spring, what we're going to need to do is try and get this thing jacked up and level. It was originally just set on concrete blocks, cement blocks, and the frost moves those, and it's as you can see, it has shifted right off them, and so it is sloping downhill, and it's also kitty cornered now. It's not parallel to the house, so once we get some repairs done on it and springtime comes, then we're going to have to study and get some guidance on how best to jack this thing up and get it where we want it and get it a little bit more stable. The basis of the shed is solid. The joists and beams and studs are all solid. The flooring is good. It's got plenty of room. So we are looking forward to having this as a good place to store things. It just needs a little TLC, and there have been a lot of things around here that have not had TLC. So in any event, as we walk down here, we left Maine in the middle of July, and we had harvested from that small garden, which we showed you earlier. We had harvested some really good lettuce and some radishes. And when we left, the tomatoes were coming on and the peppers were coming on. The beet crop was pretty much a total failure. There was still broccoli growing, and there were carrots. And some of the folks who were there during the summer months visiting and living there took advantage and harvested quite a few tomatoes, and some tomato sauce was made, and some peppers. And they did harvest carrots. And I had thought I had planted a variety called Danvers Half-Long, one of the old standbys, and what it really looks like I planted were stubby K's or something. They just didn't make it down into that soil at all. So in any case, it was fun to do, and we're hoping for a better crop next year. Again, I think from here you can see the darker soil where Mary's ripped out all of the chicken wire and other stuff in this square, and I don't want to have a garden that is that large, particularly first year out. I want to keep it over here and go with this one, get this one going, and then maybe have another bed parallel to it right here, and then another bed parallel to it right here. It gets full sun, and I don't know what the soil's like, but we'll find out. So in any event, that's what our plans are. The weather is supposed to turn a little bit cooler next week, or towards the end of this week, and be only in the low 50s daytime, and in the 30s at night. We had a very light frost last week, but nothing, and I think it killed some of the growth that was down low, but it didn't do anything to anything that we had going on of importance. And so that's where we stand for now. It's going to be an interesting time, and we're enjoying ourselves. We're enjoying the challenges, and we can't wait to see what our first winter here is like. We really don't know anything about how much snow we'll get, although we'll get some for sure, and it will be cold. And I'm hearing geese in the background, but I don't see them. The geese for the last few weeks have been settling over in that field every night, and then they leave for the daytime. And what will happen is in a week or two, they will be gone over about 15 miles to the west of us. Pretty much right in the direction that we're looking is Lake Champlain, and there's a location called the Dead Creek Wildlife Refuge, and the geese gather over there by the thousands before they migrate south. And there used to be hundreds of thousands of snow geese that would go there as well, but their migratory pattern over the last 10 years apparently has shifted over into New York because of farming patterns and feed patterns and that sort of thing. But still, we intend to make a trip over to see if we can see a good collection of Canada geese. And Mary discovered we have a little apple tree here, and lots of apples were on the ground. Fairly good size actually for a tree that's been abandoned, and they'd been eaten by deer and other animals, and there was one left hanging on the tree, about 2.5 inches in diameter, and it was not in bad shape. So we cut it off and tasted it, and it was sweet as could be. So we are currently doing some research on how to best reclaim an old apple tree. We'd kind of like to do that, and our neighbor had noticed that there's some apple trees up in this group of trees, and that's our property line is in there somewhere, and he doesn't know whether the trees belong to him, us, or both. But we're also talking about working together to try and clear that out next year and see if we can't get something out of those apple trees too. That would be fun.